Hey.
Hey,
Hello.
sorry
Oh,
about
no
that.
worries.
It's like chasing the reception, chasing the Wi-Fi. Where is the Wi-Fi?
Right?
There it
You're
is.
you're in the studio right now? Is that
I
right?
am, yeah, in the studio, as they
Amazing.
say, as all the cool kids say.
Nice. How's it been going today?
Good. It's wow, sorry, I'll get a better angle here. But it's been so long since I think I was telling you earlier when we were chatting, since I've been in a studio recording music.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's such an emotional feeling right now because of the world. And this is our job, this is what we dedicate our lives to, is music. And it's just like this very deep emotional feeling, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really good, but it's also like really reflecting on that and just like appreciative, like to be in this space right now creating sound, and how
Mm-hmm.
much I've missed that. And it's, yeah, it's deep, and it's also really difficult music, so there's that too.
Do you remember like the last thing you did pre-COVID, like the last show you saw or the last gig you played or session you did?
Yeah, I was on tour actually in Asia, um, with Jonathan Kreisberg, and it was, I think, the day that things went into lockdown, and people that the flight attendants on the flight were acting kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I landed, there were like 100 text messages on my phone, and it was like, the city shut down, so it went to lockdown. So like getting back to my apartment was very difficult, and there were no cabs, and so that was the last thing I did, was played a concert in Tokyo, with those guys. So that was the last musical event.
That's
And
wild.
yeah, it's
I
crazy.
like finished my master's recital and then like 3 days later the world was shut down and I was like, at least I got that in. It was like
Crazy.
crazy.
Yeah. And so you did you have
Oh,
graduation
sorry.
and stuff, or was it? Oh,
No, I didn't. I just like hung out with my parents and my dog. And that was my graduation celebration.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on
Thanks.
graduating. You're a master
Um,
now, right?
yeah, I guess I've reached the peak. I'm the master of music.
Cool.
Um, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about CCJA and like your experience growing up, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you could just give us an idea of how you got to where you are.
Yeah. Well, I always say, and especially reflecting on like today and being in this space, if it weren't for CCJA, Paul Romaine, Chris Romaine, everyone there, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now, I don't think. So I grew up in Denver, in a suburb of Denver, Parker, Colorado, and my dad is a saxophone player, so I grew up around jazz and started playing the drums, and I studied with Paul. And then I went to Summit View Elementary School, which was a big change for me, especially at that age. Um, but there was a great music program there with a mentorship program as a part of it. So the first performance we had, it was with Paul next to me playing drums, Ron Miles, Ken Walker, and Eric Gunnison.
Wow.
And I was like, 10 or 11 years old playing with those guys. And we traveled to New Orleans for IEJE, and we played together, and that was really beautiful. So um, I continued to study with Paul. And what's really crazy is and I know you have a correct connection with Paul's family as well, but Paul's father was a saxophone teacher, and he taught my dad saxophone lessons. So it's
Cool.
like this generational thing. I can't remember what it is with your family, but
Yeah, Paul and my dad went to elementary school and middle school together.
that's
So
right.
they like used to jam in like sixth grade.
In Littleton, right? Like,
Yeah.
right, right. So that's crazy. So, yeah, I studied with them and continued to, sort of work in town locally when I was young. I remember playing at El Chapultepec. I went to sit in like when I was like 14 years old, and was like super nervous, and there were like a bunch of drunk hecklers, and Paul was like sitting in the audience, like having a conversation with somebody, but like conducting me because I didn't know the tune. I just remember these things. And so, as far as growing up in Denver, that's basically what was happening. And I just did like I went to Denver School of the Arts, which was a really incredible opportunity, and just to be around like-minded peers around the same age that were invested in the arts, and it just really broadened my whole spectrum of how important art is and music and your own voice. And so, and I did every extracurricular activity as far as music went, like the Betty Carter Jazz Ahead program or all of the other stuff out of school. I just tried to immerse myself in all of that. And so that was pretty much up until the end of high school. And then I can continue on to what college looked like as well. But that's
Yeah,
kind of how things started in Denver.
that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like CCJA, I mean, I'm with you. Like, I don't think I would be a musician if I hadn't done CCJA. And it's
Yeah,
like the community that Paul and Chris have created is like something so amazing.
absolutely. And you know, the not only the people that teach you and that you get to learn from, but the peers, you know, like I was saying, like
Hmm.
there are people from the first group I was in that I still play with, you know, and are still very close with, and it just was like that extra time away from school and just focusing on music and like West Cliff, you did West Cliff, I'm sure, and like,
I never did West
oh
Cliff.
really?
I'm so bummed about it.
Man, like back in the day, that was the hang, like playing a gig at a gas station, and like it just, you know, it was just such a special thing. And you know, now that you know, touring and sort of teaching around, it's like the more and more I go around and work with people in schools, the more I realize how important a program like CCJ is,
Hmm.
and how it could be around the country, around the world, and how lucky we have been to go through that and to get closer to the music and really learn by playing, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And we're excited that you're conducting a group. This is
Yes, me too. I had my first rehearsals on Thursday, so it was such a blast and such a trip just to sit there and be like, oh man, I'm teaching a group now. This
I
is
know.
interesting.
It's
So
so cool.
yeah,
Um, I wanted to also ask, like, during the pandemic, how how that has affected you. I mean, obviously it affects gigs and sessions and everything, but like, as an artist, have you found that it's created like any benefits, like reflective things, or I don't know, just kind of wanted to ask you about that.
yeah. Well, it's something I've been really thinking about a lot. It's really heavy, right? Because I realized that music is my everything. You know, it's my whole life. It's my way of expressing myself. You know, and um, I had always dedicated my life to music, 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 music. You know, like from a very early age, I knew exactly where I wanted to be, who I wanted to play with, what I wanted to do, um, and have been on this search to discover myself through music. And so, you know, it's just crazy how much time went by and how much development went and life experience, and you get into this cycle. And I was basically on the road all the time. And when I wasn't, I would be in New York, almost treating my home like a hotel or like a in-between place. So
Mm-hmm.
to have the pandemic hit, and it hit so hard and so quickly, and within hours to have the whole year of work just wiped away, it was really heavy for me because the first 2 months I couldn't play music, I couldn't listen to music, I couldn't think about it. It was just this very scary for all of us, but just
Mm-hmm.
it was really sad, it was really hard, but in a way that was so beautiful because it really forced me to really look at life and to really to have that thing that you give all of yourself to be taken away from you so quickly, and to
Mm-hmm.
find your way out of that darkness. And it's been very humbling in that way. And I also was by myself in my apartment in Brooklyn for about 6 months, every day. Like, it did not go out. And it was really dark. And then, of course, the death of George Floyd and all of that happened. That was a very scary time in New York too, because of the looting. And but it was interesting because I went through this thing where music kind of came back to me naturally. Like, it just, one day I woke up and I had like all of this stuff to say. And so I started to write, I got Logic and I like started to make beats and like check out hip hop and like kind of found a lot of things about myself and almost look at hip hop and getting into audio engineering and production like the same way we think about jazz. So I started to listen to like different producers like Jay Dilla, The Alchemist, Madlib, Dr. Dre, and I started transcribing them in a way. So I got Logic and I would start to listen to the beat and sort of try to transcribe each sound and then try to recreate the feeling and the bounce of it. And so I started to do that, and then I started practicing again, and it's amazing because it's been such a hard time for everyone in the world, and such an uncertain time, and then politically, like, it's so hard to even go into that, but it's so sad for the people that have lost their lives and family members and loved ones, and our country is in a really crazy period right now, which is kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, it's been, for me personally, such a time of growth. And, all of us have been talking about like going back to normal. But for me, it's not really going back to any sense of being normal. It's about forgetting the things and moving on from the things that I was investing myself in a little too much, or thinking those were really important. And I'm talking about playing and life, and to continue on with a had, and that's going to really come out in the playing, and it already has. But for me, there was a big sense of clarity around like June, and I felt like really alive and really connected. And then it kind of went back down, but I kind of surrendered to the idea of like every day is going to be really different, and we have no idea what's going to happen, and the only thing we can do is just sort of be honest with ourselves about that, and I try to be creative every single day, whether it's creating music on my laptop or playing, or, it's just been so great in that respect. And also just, I've been making a lot of lists of things I want to take care of and get done. And so in a way, it's really opened up something completely different. And I look at life and music in a deeper way, but a much healthier way, I would say also.
Yeah. That's like something I've been talking to Paul and Chris and Annie and John a lot about, like in just like staff meetings, is like, it was nice to reevaluate what we thought was so like important, and that the things that were stressing us out, that actually we now can see, like, priorities become a little more clear. And so, sweet. Let's see, oh yeah, you mentioned during that, kind of towards the beginning, that you had like set a lot of goals early on about what you wanted to be doing. Do you think you could talk a little bit about how you made those goals happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really crazy because I was in Denver very recently. Oh, there's my mom. She just got on, so she'll enjoy this. I went to Denver recently because my mom moved out of her place, because my sister is in Detroit and she has two very beautiful kids now. And so I was cleaning out the house as we were moving, and I found these old journals that I had. And I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I wrote in that journal, I want to play with Kurt Rosenwinkel, the Village Vanguard. And that's really crazy because I did that. I played with Kurt at the Vanguard. But the point of that is that I have all of these journals and these pads of paper where I wrote down like musicians' names. And so early on, I really had a very clear vision. It was very visual. Like, I saw myself being on the road and being in New York and playing with certain people. And so I think what I like to stress and really talk about is that I think that writing out things and your ideas, or however it is, everybody's different with their organization. I'm a very scattered person, but I find when I write things down that, and I keep seeing it, that I kind of urge to make it happen. But I quickly realized, you know, when I moved to New York when I was like 19 years old, that I would just run up to these people I had on my list to play, and I'd be like, hey, we should play. Some people would be really receptive and cool, but some people were like, hey, you know, like, you just moved to town, you like chill out. And that was good to hear too. But the big thing for me was learning music, people's music material and their repertoire. So somebody like Kurt Rosenwinkel or Jonathan Kreisberg, I admired their music so much that I just, every recording I could get, every bootleg, I would just learn all of the music, just every single tune. And I think I still know every single tune of Kurt's at least. And you know, I do that with a lot of different people I've never played with, you know, like Michael Brecker, Time Is of the Essence. I don't know if you know that record, with Larry Goldings, Elvin Jones, Bill Stewart, Jefferson Watts, Pat Metheny. Just note for note, I play along with a lot of records. And so I got to sort of learn the language, and not just the language of jazz, but sort of where the current state of it is and how people were playing in New York. And I remember hearing that for the first time, and sort of, people say that New York sound or whatever, but it's a more modern approach. But just having very clear goals, and as far as approaching them, I realized that, you know, I went to the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz, which is now the Herbie Hancock Institute. But that was a big turning point for me as far as setting goals, and also something that I realized about myself in that moment, because I was preparing all these tunes, and I walked into a room and there was a table, and there's Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, Ron Carter, Thelonious Monk Jr. And we had to play for them. And then I had this attitude of like, you know, you start to think about, when you see these people, you think about all the people they used to play with. So of course I started thinking about Tony Williams, but I was like, you know what? If I just sit here and try to play all my Tony stuff, that's not being honest. And that was a huge light bulb for me, because one thing I really, really, really believe in and dedicate my musical life to is honesty. And that's a very important thing. And so I just said to myself, like, I don't really care what happens here. I just got to play like me. And so I did that. And I think it resonated with them, because I got into the program, and that's when I met Kurt, because he came to teach at that program, and he started passing out his charts for us to play. And I didn't say anything. I wasn't gonna bug him and be like, "Oh, I love your music, you know, I know every tune." We just started playing, and there was so much joy, because I was playing this music that I knew, and I had my eyes closed, and I was just so happy. And at one point, he just kind of said, like, "You're not reading the charts. What's going on?" I was just like, "Oh man, I love your music. I know it, and it's just so great." And he was like, "Can I get your phone number?" And he called me like half a year later, and I started touring with him. So I think that the early goals that I had were very visual to me. I wrote them out, but I also just kept thinking about them and practicing along with these records, and a new record would come out. Or, you know, YouTube, I'm telling my age now, but YouTube had started to pop up, and you could see all these videos. It was starting to happen. And so I would like download the audio and just play along with that. Just like check everybody out, you know? Like I was talking about that with Paul the other day. He was like, "Man, you used to like know the personnel on every record, and like where it was recorded and what tunes." And I just like, it's just, there's so much joy and love in that. And I'm really blessed to say that I've a lot of things that I had written down I've gotten to do. And I'm just trying to keep that in the forefront of my life and in my heart, that you know, if you work really hard and continue to put passion into the things you really enjoy, I think that positive things can come out of that.
Yeah, I really also like what you said about honesty and being your honest musical self. That's something that has been like a common theme through all these interviews so far. And I think, yeah, it's just cool to reflect on. And like the book we're doing this month, have you read Free Play by Stephen Nachmanovich?
I have not, but I've heard lots about it. Yeah.
It's all about that too. And
oh, cool.
It's like a common theme for CCJA Sunday so far, which is
honesty.
Honesty, yeah.
Yeah.
Like last week, John Gunther gave a masterclass about sound and beauty.
Oh, wow.
And we talked about like being genuine and how that is part of what makes something beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I know like you mentioned that you have been finding a lot of inspiration in like hip hop and beats and stuff. Who are your like inspirations, jazz and like outside of jazz? Like as a drummer, I guess.
The drum. Wow, that's such a deep question. I'm not just saying this because we're talking about CCJA, but the more that I've gone into the world and played and listened to other people and discovered things about myself, the more I realized that Paul Romain is like my favorite drummer in the world because of these things we're talking about with honesty, and soul and depth and just giving your everything. And that's something I am really inspired by, is musicians that, sorry, I'm going to close this door. 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to shift it. Sorry, I was getting really distracted by hearing the playback. But what was the last thing I was saying? Yeah, Paul Romain and just Paul, just giving your everything, putting everything out there. Like whenever I hear Paul, I know that he's putting his everything into the way he plays, and that is something that really inspires me. And as a drummer, I went through Elvin Jones, Billy Higgins, and I, of course, started to get into the younger generation of musicians like Marcus Gilmore and the whole crew of my peers and the things that they're doing. And but back to the question of inspiration jazz wise, Brad Meldau has been a really big inspiration to me. As far as comping, I've been really, there was a period where I really went through lots of piano players and guitar players and would transcribe just by playing along with records, like their comping, and really got a lot from that. It's such a deep question, like influence as far as jazz go. It's funny, people always tease me. They're like, man, you play with all the guitar players. And I think that I don't know why that is, and I've been very lucky to play with a lot of amazing guitar players. And if I wasn't a drummer, I think I definitely would be a guitar player because of the instrument and what can be done with the instrument. So I just get inspired by so many things. Knee Body, I know you talked to Shane Ensley recently. I remember when I heard them, my life changed and really opened up so many things. But as far as like jazz happening now, Ron Miles is another person who has shaped my musical and personal life. And also when I was at the Monk Institute, I got to study with Brian Blade, who is truly my hero, and talk about somebody who puts their everything into their playing. And, I'm really like attracted to that way of playing, and have come to that realization in my life with music that less is more, and that if I could draw back and really simplify everything and be honest with everything, I would find a quicker way to connect with the people listening and the fellow musicians I play with. So of course, if I were to answer that question in another 15 minutes from now, it would be a completely different answer.
Right,
but,
totally.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul's here.
Yeah.
He sent a lot of nice emojis.
Oh, my
Hey,
man.
Paul. Cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you say apart from jazz or just?
yeah, I was wondering also, like, outside of jazz, what you are into.
Yeah. It's so funny. We're talking about the pandemic and how that's changed things. It's so funny. I've listened to music that I used to be so closed-minded about or just annoyed with. But as far as like, because I'm trying to learn how to mix and record like audio, like getting into that world and production. And I've been listening to so much pop music. Like I would never see myself sitting down to listen to like an Ed Sheeran record, but I have even Justin Bieber, who, anyways, but just the production of that and just to open up, but also to like ask myself the question of like, people listen to this music and they're attached to it, and why is that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And to sort of take some of the things I've learned about production and put them into jazz. And we were talking earlier, I've been really inspired by a few different artists. Maggie Rogers is a pop artist who writes her own music and produces, and Pharrell Williams discovered her. Um, a great bass player, Kate Davis, put out a rock record. Um, Emily King, a lot of pop music, and a lot of hip hop too. You know, like I was saying before, a lot of, and the Beatles. Like I think I did a survey the other day, and it was like, of all the music, what would you say you listen to on a daily basis? And it was the Beatles for
Yeah,
sure.
me too.
You know, they're everything to me. And I was on a flight the other day, and it was like I saw 8 Days a Week, that new documentary. Is so amazing. It's about like it's about that thing they never really talked about how hard it was to tour with the screaming fans and the musical aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I've discovered so much and love Ringo Starr and yeah,
Yeah, there's nothing like a Ringo fill. Like,
exactly. And the tea towels, putting the towels on top of the drums and the sounds and absolutely.
yeah,
Less
I
is
got really
more.
into the
Yeah.
Beatles like even more than ever, like
Yeah.
during the pandemic. I think it was like comforting because it's my favorite thing as a kid and
Yeah.
forever. Yeah, I like watched Magical Mystery Tour for the first time.
Really? I don't think I've ever seen that one.
It's bizarre, but it's like my all my favorite Beatles songs are is
Oh,
that
okay.
album.
That
Yeah,
record. Yeah.
yeah. Do you have any like plans or projects or like dream projects you want to do? Anything in the works, or just like things that you would love to do someday?
Yeah, I mean, it was deep because the trio that I have, Stranahan, Zaleski, Rosado, we just had released our new record. Um, was it February? Yeah, and so we had a lot of plans, a lot of tours that were being booked through, and we were going to record for a record label out here with Kurt Rosenwinkel as a special guest. And so I think all of those things are on hold. Of course, you know, who knows? But um, yeah, I've been sort of working on a solo record right now. I don't know what it's going to be like. It's a lot of solo drum stuff, but I'm adding in more instruments and electronics and stuff like that. So I'm trying to focus that in and actually make that something. Um, Spending a bit more time in Denver these days. I have some ideas for um, recording with some people out there. I have a lot of, I always create bands in my head, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
Strana Band is a band I have that I would like to record.
Mm-hmm.
And I have another band idea called the Dream Team, uh, which would be with Mark Turner and Ron Miles, Thomas Morgan and Bill Frisell, like very spacey. You know, Paul Motion is another hero of mine, and you know everything that he did, I really, I really started to get super into it towards the end of his life. And every time he would play the Vanguard, I'd be sitting at the on the bench right behind the drums, watching him, and he was such a grumpy old man, but like I didn't care. I just had to sit there and watch him play. And so, you know, there's yeah, lots of plans. You know, Ron Miles and myself have talked so much about making something happen, and that I call it the dream team because it hasn't happened, but I hope that it does.
Hmm.
But you know, that's also changed because of the pandemic. You know, a lot of things that I would like to happen or to have come up, and it's really hard to see what the life of, you know, I was on the road so much in the last 10 years that it's such a huge adjustment to not be traveling so much. And so
Hmm.
I guess there's that part of life that is sort of catching up to me that I'm kind of trying to develop in the same way I develop music. So um, just a lot of living life in a healthy way, you know,
Hmm.
that's kind of the immediate goal for now. But yeah.
I feel that. Do you have a favorite place you've traveled to, or like any crazy travel stories or anything?
I love Japan so much. I love the food. I love sushi. I love the culture. The people that come to listen are so amazing and hear everything and have so much respect. And um, you know, it's just the best. It's so cool to be out there. And I love the fact that they have these big Blue Note clubs that we play out a lot, but there's also these tiny little like coffee shop type places where they only fit like 40 people in it. And the feeling of playing in that setting, I just love small clubs. I just have always been so moved by having that audience right here next to you and just everybody breathing and feeling the music together, you know. Like I just, of course there's many places in Europe and stuff like that, but Japan is certainly special. Um, and also, yeah, I mean, I went to India. I got to go to India, which was incredible. And I played with Zakir Hussain.
Wow.
I went to Ravi Shankar's house with Herbie Hancock, and we played together. It was so crazy. Yeah, just lots of beautiful experiences in traveling. Some really scary stories too, just traveling and getting stuck places. And um, but yeah, it's amazing to be kind of stopped right now and to reflect on all of that stuff. And I feel
Hmm.
like I should write a book or something. But
Yeah,
uh,
you have the time.
yeah, exactly,
Oh,
right?
shit. When you mentioned your solo project that you're working on, I
Yeah.
was curious, like, what your compositional process is like. As a drummer, I just don't know what that. I feel like that opens so many possibilities rhythmically that I probably don't know about. But then I wonder, like, I don't know, just what your process is like when you're writing
Yeah.
solo and then developing tunes and all that.
Well, sorry, I keep shaking around. That's probably very annoying. But
Oh,
with the solo project, I'm really forcing myself to treat it a lot differently. Um, I'm trying to start composing from the drums, from a rhythmical standpoint. And so what I'll do is I'll just sit down and improvise and sort of just kind of flow. And then when I arrive to something, I'll just kind of keep repeating it. And I always record myself when I practice. And so I'll kind of get to a loop or something like that, and then I'll get it down and I'll record it, and then I'll start building off of that. So I've really tried to change up my compositional ideas because I know I'm dropping so many names. I should have like coins for every time I drop a name. But I got to take a couple of lessons, compositional lessons from Wayne Shorter, and that was crazy, and that changed my life.
wow.
And it's amazing because the first lesson I ever had with him was like 15 minutes long, and it was probably the heaviest musical lesson I've ever learned. And he said, he was just sitting there and he said, play me something. And I was like, okay. So I played him one of my tunes on piano, and he was like, he kind of sat there for a while. He didn't really say anything. And I was like, oh man, I just played the tune for Wayne Shorter. And he was like, when you leave this room, go buy a book of manuscript. And he was like, every day, write a melody. Don't think about harmony. Don't think about time. Just write the notes that you hear. Write melodies. It's like, do that for a year, every day for a year. And he said, put that book away for a while and then go back to it and play through those melodies and start to think about harmony. And I was like, and that was it. He said, okay. And I was like, at first I was kind of like, okay, he's such a heavy person because he talks and he teaches the way that he plays. Wayne is able to see the beginning and the end of things, but the way he gets there, he never repeats himself, or he's always able to, I don't know, it's just something being around him and watching him talk. And but it hit me later, what he was saying is all of my compositions are so linear and so 8-bar phrases or 4-bar phrases, or that he was trying to break down that wall. And so thinking outside and creating just melody totally changed up my approach. And starting to hear melody and rather than trying to fill up an amount of space, just melody can carry through, and then you discover the harmony later. Because I've always been somebody who tries to find a few chords, progressions, and then I kind of go from there. But now it's all flipped because of what Wayne did to me, and also like just starting from the drums, I'm really forcing myself to go, all right, let's start here and see what happens. And it's cool. Like I'm just learning so much. So right now it's a lot of that, and just repeating things, taking chunks of things and putting them around. I started playing the guitar, and I've written a few songs on guitar. So right now it's just really experimenting with a very unknown and uncomfortable way of composing. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any tips for like young composers who are like maybe CCJA students or anyone else who's a student that will watch this? Like, if you're like just getting into writing, like where do you even start?
Yeah. Well, I could answer in the very studious way and say, learn your harmony and learn blah, blah, blah. But I think it's important and it's essential to experiment with writing. It's true, and I learned it the hard way by stopping composing for a long time, but it's like practicing, And right now for me, a lot of it is creating beats and stuff. Like every day I dedicate like an hour or two to just creating. And so I would say to younger people learning about composition and starting to compose, to just start by exploring and creating it, and not hide away from your influences. Or if you start playing something and improvising, you might start quoting a tune or something, but don't be stopped by that, but to keep going and try to bring all of your influences into your writing as a starting point, because for me, for such a long time, I was just like, oh, this sounds a lot like a Rosenwinkel tune, or this is another tune. I don't know what this is, or, but to really just explore, to try to record yourself, and just play for a while, and even as an exercise, improvise for a while and record it, and then go back and just take a little bit of space. With the iPhone and the voice memos, you can cut them up and edit. Try to find like a loop or a starting point, and then jump off from there, I would say. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself well, I guess I'm a composer, but I'm learning how to be a composer. I'm a student of composition, so.
I feel like everyone is always.
Yeah.
For me, like the first 10 days of quarantine, I did like quarantunes, and people would send me titles, and then I would like write a tune based on that title. And then
that's awesome.
And
wow.
then I started seeing all these like habits, compositional habits.
Mm.
And now that I've had some space from that, also like picking up the guitar and stuff has like opened up like brand new ways to compose.
Yeah.
It's so fun that like it's a lifelong journey to.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I think that for so long, I have this little baby acoustic guitar my brother-in-law gave me. It's a baby Taylor, and I think through studying with Brian Blade, who, I'm sure you're familiar with Mama Rosa and the music where he sings. He had those songs written for years and years, and even had recordings of some of them. And he was so shy about sharing them with the world. But he played a lot of guitar for me, and I don't know anything about guitar. I've learned from hanging with a lot of guitar players, like certain chords, but that, like you just said, that's the beauty of it, is I was so afraid to just like pick it up and just put my hands down and see what sounds cool, but I've started to do that, and like some people have showed me some really weird tunings and stuff, and just to like record yourself doing that and vibe on that and just see what comes out. It's just such a beautiful experience. And I think that I encourage people to do more and more, just like dedicate just a bit of time to just exploring and improvising, because it's such an important way to compose, but also it's such an important experience to have within yourself, of discovery of what's out there, Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been like playing free a lot during the pandemic, and that has like helped me like stay grounded sometimes.
Yeah, nice.
Before bed, just like kind of like a release, of
Yeah,
all the stuff
absolutely.
that's going on in the world.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying before. Like it took me a while to rediscover what that felt like and where that was in my life. And also like right before you sleep, that's probably really heavy. Do you have dreams with music in them?
I had one last night where like my mom, who's she sings in like a Swedish women's choir. Sorry, I'll keep this short, but like she was playing at Nocturne in my dream with my mom, with my dad and sister, who like my sister does not play piano, but she was playing piano. And then suddenly like the whole room was like singing the same tune. It was like Stomping at the Savoy or something.
Wow.
And it felt like one of those pandemic videos that people post of like a community like singing from the balconies or something.
Yeah.
It was like a really heavy, deep, emotional dream.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is
I don't know.
heavy.
Do you ever dream about music?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if I do something right before, I mean, I don't really sleep. I'm a total insomniac. Like, I really don't sleep, especially when I mean, I do sometimes, but it's usually during the day. But I find when I'm doing something creative and I fall asleep that I dream and I discover, yeah, I hear certain things, or I am in a certain setting. I find myself, and it's really tricky because you wake up and it's like you're like trying to find somewhere to write it down or play, but it just goes away as soon as you start playing an instrument. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of different people about that, about dreams, and yeah, I do dream a lot about music or hear music for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I feel like maybe you need to get back to this session pretty soon here. Do you have any like final thoughts or anything you want to say?
Man, I've said so much. I feel like I've been blabbering on, but it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and anything for CCJA, it's I know the world is in such a crazy time right now, but for those out there that are in the program or are thinking about joining the program, it's just such a great space to be in. And I think what's really beautiful about the world right now is that we've all had to slow down, and we've been taken away some very important things out of our lives, especially as artists and expressing ourselves. And I think we're discovering, especially now with everything happening politically in the world, that love and compassion and the sense of community and encouragement and positivity are paramount. and the most important things in our life right now. And I really think that for us, for the people that are artists and that are dedicating their life to music, especially, that having gone through this experience together and everyone having their own personal journey through the pandemic, it's just going to bring us even closer together if we allow it to, you know. And hopefully the country will do that too politically. But I think that, you know, all we can do is change the way that ourselves, you know, and be a positive reflection upon the world. And so I guess I'll end by saying this, you know, I am going to drop another name, so you should get a coin. But I was hanging out with Herbie Hancock when I got to work with him, and I was just in awe of everything that he says and does, and how sharp he is at the age that he is, and he's just so fresh and so childish, and I mean that in a positive way. But he's such a young spirit, and I said, Mr. Hancock, like, how do you get so deeply into the music, and how do you get to that space where you're just in it, and you're on that, in that depth, and you're playing, you're just so amazingly and connected with the other musicians? Like, how do you get to that point? How do you work on that? And he just looked at me and he said, Colin, it's just about being a good human being. And there's so much truth to that. And you know, I'd really strive to try to be open and positive and loving and supportive of any situation that I'm in, and just never half-ass things, and just take every opportunity as a gift, and try to put down on a recording or an experience, something that we can all share together, but something that sticks and stays with us and remains with us, you know. And that's one thing I didn't say, but I wanted to say, is that through Herbie saying that to me, you know, one thing about being a musician and performing, and I know it's hard right now because we're not playing for big crowds of people or anything, but I think when we're creating this art, of course, we need to focus on the music that we're making, but we also need to think about who we're making the music for, and read the room, and think about, especially with the pandemic and this experience, when we're performing, I always try to give my all and give myself to people. You know, and it's amazing how some people have come up to me and they've said, I'm not a musician at all, but I really resonated with what you were playing. And that is the reason why I play music, because I want to connect with people, and I want to take a moment out of their lives and give them something inspiring that hopefully changes them in a positive way forever. So
that's awesome. That's such a great way to end the interview. Thank you so much for
thank you.
doing
It was a pleasure talking to you.